Welcome, everyone. I, Councilmember Tola Martz, call the Tuesday, May 20th, 2025 City Council Services, Safety, and Parks Committee to order. First item on the agenda, which I should have gotten to before I called to order, is public comment. There are multiple public comment opportunities at tonight's meeting. There's a general public comment opportunity at the beginning of the meeting, or you may make comments after the presentation and council question and answer period tonight on tonight's agenda items before the committee moves to deliberation on that item. Members of the public may address council at this time in person or virtually. Those who signed up in advance to make comments will be called on first. If you are joining us virtually and would like to make comments, please raise your virtual hand. If you're on the phone, press *3. If you have joined by computer or smartphone, look for a hand icon. This varies by device. One option may be to go to the participant panel and choose the raise hand icon in the lower right-hand corner. If you're in the room and did not sign up, I will ask for other speakers before closing this portion of the meeting. I will wait for a moment to see if anyone wishes to raise their hand. Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak or indicated a desire to speak this evening?
I do not see any virtual hands, and there is no one signed up in person to speak at this time.
All right. As a reminder, written comments can be submitted at any time to citycouncil@issaquah.gov. Next up, we have approval of minutes, and I think the way we've been doing lately is just asking if anyone has any potential changes to the minutes. Otherwise, we will accept them by unanimous consent. Acclamation is the word I was looking for. Thank you, Deputy Council President. So, Clerk, please consider that the minutes have been approved. We will move now to our first agenda item, COM 0126. Capital Improvement Plan. I apologize to my fellow committee members who have heard this spiel in other committees, but I have not. So I'm going to make them go through it again.
Go ahead and get yourself set. Great. Good evening. I'm Jennifer Rain, Acting Finance Director. And with the support of Jillian Straub, our Management Analyst, and assistance from Susie Monsell, our Budget Manager, I look forward to the opportunity to speak with you today regarding the 2027-2032 Capital Improvement Plan. Tonight, we're going to walk through a 2-year update to the city's capital improvement plan, or what we call the CIP. The CIP is a citywide planning tool for this update. We broke it into sections for review by the appropriate committees. This evening, we'll take our attention to 3 key areas of the plan: Parks and Trails, and I'll invite Jeff Watling, our Director of Parks and Community Services, to lead that part of the presentation, and Facilities and IT Projects, which will be presented by Autumn Monahan, Director of Administrative Services. As we move forward, we're seeking the committee's input on the following. First, we'd like the committee's feedback on the CIP themes, particularly the focus on prioritizing maintenance, with a special emphasis on increased maintenance for city facilities. Second, we're looking for the committee's thoughts on the timing and funding of 2 major capital projects, the new IPD and City Hall facilities. And finally, we'd appreciate the committee's perspective on the proposed investments in parks and trails, as well as facilities and IT projects. To start, let's briefly go over what the Capital Improvement Plan, or CIP, is. The CIP is a 6-year plan the city updates every 2 years to outline upcoming capital investments. Because the current budget already includes funding through 2026, the CIP will cover 2027 to 2032. This ensures that it aligns with the 2025-26 budget and is ready to support investment decisions starting with the 2027-28 budget cycle. It is a key element in the city's comprehensive plan, helping to ensure that our long-term growth and development are guided by strategic forward-thinking investments. The CIP also includes the annual Transportation Improvement Program, detailing planned transportation-related projects and upgrades. The CIP outlines potential funding strategies for projects, though it does not guarantee funding or commit the city to specific timelines. And finally, the CIP is subject to change. As priorities evolve, costs shift, and new opportunities or challenges arise, this plan is revised to reflect the most current needs of the community. And it is also important to note what the CIP is not. So the CIP, in summary, is not a budget document. While it does identify potential projects and funding sources, it does not authorize spending. Actual funding decisions are made through the city's biennium budget process. Next, I'd like to give a quick overview of the major themes and changes shaping this year's CIP update. First, we continue to see a familiar challenge. Needs are outpacing revenues. As the demand for capital projects grow, available funding, especially from the general fund and real estate excise tax, or REIT, is becoming more limited. At the same time, we're anticipating fewer grant opportunities in the near future, which adds an additional pressure to local funding sources. We're also navigating an uncertain financial and economic outlook, which makes long-term planning more difficult. And given this, we're focused on keeping the CIP update and process simple and flexible so it can adapt as needed. One key theme is the prioritization of maintenance, especially for aging facilities. Many of our buildings are needing urgent maintenance upgrades that can no longer be deferred, which could potentially lead to greater costs or risk. In addition, this update reflects findings from the latest utility rate study, including planned investments like a new water treatment plant, which will be a major infrastructure priority moving forward. Overall, the CIP aims to balance maintaining what we have with planning smartly for what's ahead. And now I'll invite management analyst Jillian Straub up here to go over revenue.
All right, I'll be going over a little bit more detail on revenue before directors take it into a little bit more detail about specific categories of projects. So, in a little bit of a deviation from what's previously been done with the CIP, the 27 and 28 years of the CIP don't perfectly balance revenues and expenditures. This means that some revenue sources that you see listed in the CIP are overtapped throughout 27 and 28, meaning that we couldn't possibly fund all the projects we want to from those revenue sources as we forecast them now. This will likely mean a need to secure new funding sources or prioritize further when we get closer to 27 and 28 and have a clearer idea of what those years look like. However, we wanted this to be a fairly realistic plan, so we already sought to get pretty close to balanced in those first few years of the CIP by reducing the scope of projects that are funded in those years with those overtapped revenue sources, phasing projects, pushing them entirely to out years in the CIP, moving them to more stable funding sources as was possible, and when considering how to prioritize, focusing on maintenance over new assets. This chart displays most of the major funding sources in the CIP. We'll talk in more detail about real estate excise tax, or REIT, and the general fund in a moment, but I want to call out a few of the funding sources on this chart. First, the School Zone Safety Fund, as you can see here, has an average fund balance of about $2 million throughout the course of the CIP. This is largely due to the new revenue that we anticipate from the additional camera location that City Council authorized in November of 2024. This fund can also now support more projects than it was previously able to. The mitigation funds, just one line below that, fund a number of projects throughout this CIP, but this CIP does draw down most of those mitigation funds to zero throughout the course of it, meaning that future CIPs and future projects won't be able to rely on these sources as we have in the past. The utility funds, water, sewer, and storm, are being addressed through the separate utility rate setting process, and are synced up between the CIP and utility rate setting. Finally, you'll hear more about the City Hall IPD funding source, but I just want to call out, while it's on this chart, it's not an identified revenue source, but more of a capture of what we think that need is going to be across the CIP, while accounting for the fact that this is a slightly older cost estimate and that this work is subject to a separate process, the task force process, similar to the utility rate study. With that, let's talk a little bit about real estate excise tax and the general fund. So as you can see here in 27 and 28, REIT has about $5.3 and $4.8 million respectively in capital projects asks over the course of 27 and 28. However, it can't support that amount of capital projects, and will need to be evaluated as we get closer to those years. The general fund is a little bit different. We looked at what historically the general fund has contributed to capital projects and found that it was an average of around $900,000. So we compared that historical average to this CIP's level of request from the general fund, and we found that we had over-requested from the general fund compared to our historical average. So it's not quite the same as a fund balance calculation like you're seeing in the REIT table. But it does show that there will have to be some reprioritization through the 27-28 budget process. All right, and this slide includes includes an overview of the CIP with projects by category. As you can see, a lot of the projects are concentrated in municipal facilities and transportation. I'll also call out that the final column in this table shows the unidentified revenue sources needed. So you'll see a pretty big number in that municipal facilities line. That's largely due to the City Hall IPD funding source that hasn't been identified yet, but also some in parks and trails and technology and systems. And with that, I'll turn it over to Director Monahan.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Autumn Monahan, Director of Administrative Services. So first we'll talk about facilities. There's a theme already tonight, that's maintenance of existing assets. And that's very much what you'll see here in our list for facilities. And then also wanted to provide you an update on our task force work for around City Hall and the police facilities. So the mayor appointed a task force, the Public Safety and Civic Facilities Task Force. We started meetings in March. Chair Martz is part of that group, along with Councilmember Hall. We've held 4 meetings. We have 3 meetings to go. We kicked off the process with tours of our facilities. We've also dove into just a project overview. We've done some visioning exercises. We've got a space needs assessment that's been updated by our consultants. We did a Q&A with our police chief. We've been brainstorming potential City Hall sites. And most recently, we're talking through our priorities and also looking at the results of an online survey around the community's needs for space. A recommendation and new cost estimates will be presented to the council this summer following the task force work. And as mentioned already, the CIP is pretty much status quo for now on this project until that work wraps up, and there's no funding source quite yet listed. As far as other facility projects in the CIP, we've created a new window replacement program so that we start better maintenance on replacing our windows. The demolition of this building, City Hall South, once the court moves to the King County Courthouse. Pavement repairs at Tibbetts Manor, which are desperately needed. Some divider curtains for the community center to just better enable operations there for our customers. A emergency generator for the police building. Sewer system lining for our jail, and an automated gate for better security at our facilities and park shop. A few projects that were revised from the last CIP include some energy efficiency and electrification updates. These were identified during the investment grade audit and a facility fuel transition assessment in partnership with our sustainability division. Renewable energy for municipal buildings and infrastructure. This includes some solar projects, also identified in partnership with sustainability. A parking building expansion for public works. This project has been designed but was put on hold to fund some more urgent needs at public works, and so this project reappears now on the CIP. The HVAC replacement program has been tweaked some. And then finally, we've kind of bundled a few projects that are needed at the pool, including windows, ceiling, flooring, and a bulkhead upgrade. The projects that were removed from the CIP include a new fire station or updated Fire Station 71, some facility life cycle investments. Those have been replaced with specific projects in the CIP instead of in one program. And then we reorganized the public safety space needs. Police and court was replaced with the midlife renovation for the PD building and then a court lease. Any questions on those before we move on?
Deputy Council President?
We had an email about, I think, the City Hall South demolition. That's going through the Facilities Committee, right?
We have not talked specifically about demolishing this building, but there has been some discussion around what the future use of this property could be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
wanted to clarify that.
Yes.
Yeah. And you probably saw that email as well. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. Next, I'll invite up Director Watling to talk through parks and trails.
Thanks, Autumn. Good evening. Jeff Watling, Parks Community Services Director. Continuing the theme and the thread of taking care of what we have and maintenance, as you look at the themes we took into the 6-year CIP, investing in our current parks to increase capacity and address aging assets is a top priority. I'd note as I touch on all these themes, these were informed through extensive community engagement and the park system plan update that we went through and you all adopted just last year. So being able to take those themes right into our park CIP is most helpful. Next theme, a really important one, is a balancing active and passive recreation within the system. We've heard from our community. We know that our park system is expected to play multiple roles. It plays an essential role in conservation and preservation, but it also plays a really, really important role in providing recreation space that our residents expect a city park system to have, developed athletic fields, play areas, plazas, sort of the hardscape areas of a park system. So balance is a really key theme. Last theme we carried through is really playing off of the Creeks to Peaks vision we have for the park system, and that is this opportunity that Issaquah has that's so rare and unique in the Puget Sound area, where we could connect every park within our system, not only within the system, but to the public lands that surround us. As for a quick look at projects here, we have one new project that was identified in that park system plan update. I would note that within the park system plan, as you look at that, you'll notice a really extensive sort of 20-year vision of projects. We then prioritized near-term, mid-term, and long-term projects in the park plan. We took those near-term recommendations or priorities of the community, and that became sort of the foundation of our 6-year CIP. So one of the new projects is West Issaquah Highlands Neighborhood Park. As we all know, initial sort of development plan of Issaquah Highlands did not have a lot of residential development on the west side of Highlands Drive. That is very, very different as that has gotten built out with single family and multifamily. The opportunity for a neighborhood park on that side of Highlands Drive is something we want to begin planning for within the 6-year CIP. You'll notice in the last year of the 6-year CIP, we propose initiating community engagement around that neighborhood park. The city owns a parcel just west of Swedish Hospital that is wonderfully located, would be great connection to the High Street public linear park, as well as provide opportunity for a possible trail down to Issaquah Preston Trail. So a neighborhood park that would also provide a connection for Highlands residents to get down to the valley. In terms of revised projects, quite a few. If you wish, I could go through these. I don't intend to. These are all projects you're very familiar with. They were in our prior CIP. I would note, really, a lot of the revisions to these had to do with two things. As you heard Jillian speak to revenue projections and the revenue realities, we wanted to try as best we could to live within those, and also understand our current staffing levels. The prior 6-year CIP was planned with the existing staff we had at the time with 2 park planners. We have 1 park planner now, so we wanted to also be very realistic and pragmatic as to the rate of projects that we could get done. And so these revisions include, in some cases, reducing amount, in other cases, further phasing some of the larger projects and realizing maybe that first phase needs to be a smaller phase. But all remain very, very high priorities.
Director Watling,
Yes.
can you talk about, since we're talking about a sort of not near-term, but not long-term, but sort of intermediate term, access to Squawk Mountain, and how are we thinking about our access to Squawk Mountain? And I'm asking specifically about, I think it's Mountainside. As you go up, there's a small access. And then there's, we actually own McCary Woods up in Forest Rim, and we don't have any structured access there. So what's the future for access to Squawk?
Great question. You know, through some of our more recent strategic acquisitions of both the Weymouth property and most recently the Kalkari property, those acquisitions provide a 35-acre corridor that really would become the key and new sort of public corridor up into the trail system within the city on Squawk Mountain, but also Squawk Mountain State Park, which is further outside of the city.
Yeah, I mean, those are down near sea level, right? This is a 2,000-foot mountain. Our higher accesses on Mountainside is like 900 feet, and Forest Rim itself, I'm not sure there's a good way to access that. It's more like 1,200 feet. So it's significantly higher up the mountain, and so we have the luxury really on both Cougar and Squawk of having multiple potential altitude entries into
Absolutely.
those state
Right.
systems, which we don't really have, of course, on Tiger. We just have Tradition Plateau and points below that, right? So do we have any plans, for instance, the trailhead on Mountainside? Is there any long-term plan to expand that? It fits a few cars.
Yeah, currently, there's not. I mean, as we looked at the park system plan didn't identify that as a near-term priority. I think given its relationship to some of the residential around it, expanding that trailhead didn't seem like a top priority. I think one of the priorities we heard from the community was if you don't live on Squawk Mountain, it's hard to access Squawk Mountain. So how do we provide a more elegant trail connection and entry into other residents to get onto Squawk without conflicting or impacting those who live on Squawk Mountain? So
Sure.
that was,
Sure.
at least in terms of priorities, the nearer term priority was really trying to figure out a way to do that. Happy to talk with you further and
Yeah,
sort of
I
think
mean,
through.
I think there should be, again, at this medium to long-term time horizon, it's not a 2-year kind of a thing. And we're doing great things in the valley, and the connections we're making to the base of Squawk are awesome. Not everyone's going to want to do a 2,000-foot ascent, right? And so having the properties that we have further up Squawk, I personally have used that Mountainside trailhead many times. And doing a 1,000-foot ascent feels a lot different than a 2,000-foot ascent, right?
Yep.
So anyhow, it is something I think that we should think about because I think that if we had we're never going to have a trailhead like Anti-Aircraft Park has over in Bellevue, right? That's just not in the cards. We couldn't build something like that, but we could possibly do something to make the upper mountain more accessible. So I would, at a later date,
Absolutely.
like to have a
That
conversation
would be great.
on
It'd be great to explore that further.
Thanks.
All right, in terms of a couple of removed projects, again, these are priorities and remain priorities, but trying to be realistic with both the realities of projected revenues as well as our staffing capacity. These 4 projects have fallen off the 6-year CIP horizon, but certainly remain priorities within our park system plan update. And should either grant opportunities or others present themselves, we would come back to you and have that conversation. So these aren't projects that have gone away. Just in reality, to try and get these done in the 6-year horizon would be difficult, along with the other priorities. Any questions before I pass the ball back to Autumn?
I don't think so.
All right, thank you.
All right, I'm back to talk IT. So once again, the focus for IT was the maintenance of our existing assets, replacing some of our current infrastructure, so really thinking ahead as far as what that replacement cycle is for some of our infrastructure. And then right-sizing our current needs, just based on the fact that we're modernizing as a city and our technology. So some new projects, implementing the wireless meter reading project, replacing a server cluster, creating a program to replace our SCADA network on a more frequent basis, replacing our permitting software, moving the fiber from this facility across the street, replacing our parks and recreation software, and replacing our battery backup at Public Works. As for revised projects, our annual PC replacement program will now be proposed to be funded not from REIT, but from an IT cost allocation. And our IT network equipment replacement program has grown, and again, that's to reflect the needs of our more modernized community or our city. And that's what I have for IT.
Councilmember Ray.
Autumn, what's the replacement cycle on our computer technology?
On our laptops?
Yes.
I believe, and Gus Talan is on the phone too, I believe it's every 3 to 5 years, depending on the user and the type of laptop.
Okay, great, thanks.
I have a question about, are we still doing ERP implementation consulting? We were doing it for many, many years.
Sure. Not, but it depends on what you mean by implementation. So not as far as like the general onboarding of
ERP
Munis.
backbone.
Yeah, that is completed.
That has been
Yeah.
completed. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
All right. That's the only question I have.
Okay, great.
So I think to review, oops, sorry.
Gus Twana, up, and he turned his camera off. Never mind. Wasn't sure if Gus had something. Gus, do you have something to add?
No, I just wanted to assist Autumn with questions, but no, I do not. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
No worries. Great. Well, to review the timing and next steps, the CIP has been presented in sections to the appropriate committees for input and feedback. Stormwater projects were reviewed by the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee, while transportation, water, and sewer priorities were brought to the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee. After tonight's presentation, the CIP will have a full review on June 16th at the Committee of the Whole. Following that will be the potential adoption on June 23rd. The Transportation Improvement Program must be adopted by July 1st, so this timeline keeps us on track for this requirement. This timeline ensures that there's ample opportunity to review, provide feedback, and refine before the plan is adopted and finalized. In summary, we'd like to have the committee answer a few questions or review these questions for consideration and feedback. Are the proposed CIP themes, especially the emphasis on facility maintenance, aligned with the committee's priorities? What are the committee's thoughts on the timing and funding of the new IPD and City Hall facilities? And finally, is there feedback on proposed parks, trails, facilities, and IT projects? Your feedback in these areas will be instrumental in shaping the final result of the CIP as we look forward. And thank you for your time and your thoughtful input.
Jennifer, before we get to those, there's one project that I think I'd love to just get bore down into just a little bit, just because it's been such an ongoing interest of the council for so long. And it's the Westlake Sammamish Parkway sidewalk project. So could you just talk a little bit about, because that's been something that we've continued to have, it's been something that's been important to the council. It's a big ticket item. And I want to make sure people understand that it's in here and what it looks like in here. So is there somebody who's with us today who can just talk about it a little bit?
Councilmember March?
Sure.
Yes, Councilmember Ray?
Well, we just heard that particular initiative at the Mobility Infrastructure last week. So it's been aired, it's been discussed, and really not a parks-related or services safety-related.
It's an incredible safety-related issue.
okay.
So if you would like to, I view it more as a safety-related issue from what folks there told me. Well, if you would be willing to share on it, or if it got presented in another committee, that's fine. But it is a safety issue.
And Mr. Chair, members of the committee, the project remains in the plan. We continue to struggle with financing issues, and I think when you hear all this put together at the committee of the whole, those financing issues will be one of the major overview topics that we're going to be asking the council to consider.
I guess I was just looking for the fact that it's slated for 2028 in bulk, that there's a large intended timeline for 2028 to perform that.
We have concerns about the ability to finance it. And so the council, when we bring all this together at the committee of the whole in a few weeks, that'll be a prime discussion.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No other questions. I will invite audience comment at this time before we move into the deliberation phase. So I will ask again if any members of the public either here with us this evening or folks at home in participating electronically have any interest in providing feedback before we deliberate on these questions. I'm not seeing any audience interest here in the room, and I'll ask the clerks if there's any indication of interest online.
Yes, I do see one virtual hand raised. I will make you a participant and.
Before we do that,
sorry.
let me go through the public comment overview. Members of the public may address council at this time in person or virtually. Oh, I did that part. It's the latter part that I didn't do. Public comments are an important part of the public process. We take them seriously and factor them into the decisions we make. During audience comments, members of the public are invited to address the council regarding matters that are directly related to city programs, projects, services, or events. Comments related to political campaigns are not permitted. Anyone from the public who wishes to comment will have the opportunity to do so. Please direct comments to the whole council and not individuals. While this is not a question and answer session, we will contact you to follow up if needed. When recognized, unmute your microphone or step up to the lectern, state your name, address, and relationship to the city. Speak clearly and pause frequently. Limit comments to 5 minutes. If you are attending virtually and do not respond after your name or phone number is called, or if your connection is lost unexpectedly, the meeting will need to proceed. You are encouraged to rejoin the meeting if able. Written comments can be submitted at any time to citycouncil@issaquah.gov. Personal attacks, obscene language, derogatory remarks, and disruptive behavior, such as shouting, booing, clapping, and stomping feet, will not be permitted. If the speaker is out of order, the presiding officer will direct the speaker to return to his or her seat, or for virtual attendees, may direct staff to mute their microphone. If the speaker does not comply, the presiding officer may take a recess to restore order. Or if a disruption to the meeting occurs and order cannot be restored, the presiding officer may proceed to use one of the options provided for in RCW 42.30.050 to ensure orderly continuation of the meeting. Again, public comments, written and verbal, are an important aspect of the public process. The city takes comments seriously, and we thank members of the public for taking the time to address us during our meeting. With that, if you would bring our first online speaker.
Thank you. I apologize for getting ahead of myself before. Okay, I have somebody by the initials of CM. I'm making you a panelist. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Chuck Mangione. It's showing still muted. There we go.
Okay, I'm finally getting there. This is Connie. And it's, nope, and we even got video. All right, thank you. So Connie Marsh, that whole preamble sort of cracks me up every time. I'm gonna stomp my feet, baby. So, this whole, Connie Marsh, I live on Squawk. This whole amount of money going to city hall facilities and police station is sucking the air out of the room in the first few years of funding. And it is probably not very fundable. So I'm a little disturbed by how it's being presented in the CIP. I think a cart ahead of the horse type of a situation. So then let's move on to the demo of City Hall. Now, the demo of City Hall has been presented to the board, the group that's talking about the potential for a new City Hall as a done deal. We are demoing City Hall South. And there's not been a council decision on that. And it is sneaking into the CIP and then could potentially go sliding through budget without a public discussion. And so this does seem to be the very meeting where the demo of City Hall South is supposed to be discussed, because I saw it on like 4 different slides. So I think this is the appropriate meeting for that, especially when we're saying that the priority is maintenance of buildings. And that is a building that needs maintenance, and the maintenance has been disregarded for years. So this whole method of doing it is making me uneasy, and I feel like it's cutting out the public discussion of whether the community thinks that we should be demoing the community-owned buildings paid for by our taxes. So I'm not a fan of this type of process that you're doing exactly right now. And would ask council to say something in the range of, we are going to have a separate agenda bill discussing a potential demo of City Hall South as an independent line item, rather than just doing it in budget, which I expect is what's going to happen. So, then when we talk about future money, I talked about Tibbetts Creek Manor. And we're actually putting money in our CIP for a building that we don't even know that we're going to be doing anything with, and do we really want it? So I would prefer not to spend money basically putting more pavement in the wetlands area until we actually understand what we want to do with Tibbetts Creek Manor. Because I don't know that we want to maintain that puppy. What else should we be doing with it instead? So now I'm going to go back to the general presentation of the CIP with all of the green charts. I must say, I found it profoundly difficult to align the green charts with the way that the projects came out in priority order in the CIP. So I still think that there is work to be done on that for the community. I believe I'm probably the only community member today, because it's just not easy for a normal person to understand. So hopefully that was somewhat coherent and addressed a few of my concerns that maybe you would discuss. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment, Connie.
I don't know if I can cut myself off though, so somebody else is going to have to do that.
We will do that. Thank you. All right, so to deliberation. First point, the CIP themes included prioritize maintenance, especially increased maintenance of facilities. Discussion, Councilmember Ray?
I would be happy to get us kicked off, and this is appears to be a recurring theme across all of the CIP topical areas, which is let's take care of what we've got before we start buying and building and investing in more. And I think given our financial situation where we are in a deficits and not a surplus situation where we've been in the past, I am 100% behind the notion of making sure that we invest in maintaining what we have, particularly our facilities, before we start investing in new things, because we know that if we don't maintain them, then they lose value very quickly, and it makes our challenging financial situation even more challenging.
Deputy Council President?
So are we taking these one at a time? Okay. Yeah, both Councilmember Ray and I are both on the Mobility Committee, and so earlier we totally agreed on the emphasis on maintenance. And I think I'm on the record many times of saying that we need to maintain our facilities. So I'm very happy with the direction that this is taking. I agree that especially in the position that we're in, as Councilmember Ray said, where we're going to have to be still making tough decisions when this goes to the Council of the Whole, and then when it goes to the budget process, having that priority set now, I think, is going to help us as we hit up against what are the things we're going to do and not do in the future. So we still have some really hard decisions to make. But I thoroughly agree that we need to prioritize maintenance.
Thanks. I wanted to ask if perhaps the city administrator wanted to speak to the process around a City Hall South demolition and when and in what form it would come back to us and or the community.
Certainly. I'll ask Autumn Monahan, the Director of Administrative Services, to talk a little bit about this building specifically, but also the council-approved processes for disposition of property.
So the first step is moving court to the King County Courthouse. So we are finalizing the lease right now, which will be before council soon. So that is our first priority. After that, a lot of this really depends on what's next for our facilities. As I've talked before, it's very much this game of dominoes that we're playing. And so in the future, and you know, I've talked with the city council several times and can reshare some of that information around just the inability to renovate this building or to remodel it. It's a big concrete block. And we've tried before in trying to make some ADA improvements here. It used to be a fire station, and you know, we've done the best we can, but it's not very flexible as far as our space needs. So we do not have anything in policy around demolishing a building versus if we were to get rid of an asset, right, or to sell property. So we do have that policy, but we don't have anything around demolishing, from what I understand. We could be back in front of the council, definitely with an agenda bill before any decisions made on this building. Part of it is just setting up the expectation that there's a cost. If we were to reuse this property for something else, that we'd have to demolish the building.
Yeah, I guess I was assuming that whatever we would do with this building, you would meet the threshold of large enough that you'd want to come before council. It's not a rounding error as to the fate of this building.
Right.
Okay.
And the administration commits that we will have a process.
Sure.
Thank you. And then I have a question, and it's you know, you're right. So many of these things are downstream of a city hall decision, and one of those is Tibbetts Creek Manor, right, which I have wanted to see demolished for 15 years? 15 years. But I recognize that at this moment serves an important, I grudgingly admit that at this moment it serves an important purpose for the city. But hopefully, knock on wood, at some future point it won't. So what is the Tibbetts Creek Manor? I forget in the depths of the packet. What are we planning on doing with it?
Just repaving the parking lot. So the parking lot is in desperate need of repair, and we've delayed it for years and years, and now we're using that facility more and more, especially as a meeting space. And so not knowing the future of it, and considering this is a plan, it is a need that we have as far as one of our current assets, and so that's why we included it.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I agree on prioritizing maintenance in general for the city council is the pendulum swings between exciting new things that the public loves and then, resurfacing soccer fields and, their equivalent building maintenance. And it feels right that this focus that we've got, there's a lot of squirrely things in the way these monies are written up that are different in the past, and I'm not sure different in a good way, but it's also, it is a blueprint, and as a blueprint, I think it works well. I just don't know how we're going to pay for a lot of the things that are in there. But I'm with the two of you, I agree that this is the right general focus. So moving on to timing and funding of new IPD and City Hall facilities. Councilmember Ray?
I'll start. I have a question. What is the status of the funding task force, whatever that task force that you are part of?
We have 3 more meetings to go. It's not entirely clear exactly what our work product will be when that is done, but we have been reviewing options, and I would certainly offer Director Monahan a chance to summarize in perhaps a little bit more detail where that group is going. And I also apologize, I missed the last meeting as I was out of town.
Sure. So, and not to speak for the task force to take away a lot of their news as they come back and present their findings. There is great support for renovating the police station and giving that building exclusively to police. So they're seeing that very much as an urgent need. And so the discussion right now is what are the options around where City Hall goes and what does that phasing look like? So we are now working on some prioritization around, location, the idea of building versus purchasing and renovating or leasing. So talking through a lot of those things that we've talked about with the council, but really working on what the priorities are so that you have a recommendation, but you also have a menu of other options in case other opportunities come up. So that's the end goal of the task force.
Is that helpful?
That was super helpful. So I will take on bullet number 2, kind of with my thoughts on that, which is it feels like a good question, just not a good question now. I don't know why we would be trying to address this question of timing and funding until that task force has completed their work. So, because I'm missing too many big and important chunky pieces of data to say, yeah, let's do it right now or let's push it off 5 years. So I'm gonna punt on this one and say, can we revisit this? I know we're trying to finalize the CIP ASAP. Yeah, that was a bad set of acronyms, wasn't it? But, and recognizing that it's a planning document, so if we want to put it in the CIP in the years in which it sits with a big old unfunded line, which is what it is, I guess I'm not unhappy with that, but I don't think it's very meaningful. So I don't know what to do with this one at all. It just seems like we have too much incomplete information to really make a good determination of when we should be doing this and when we should be planning to do this.
I agree with that. I disagree with Connie's assessment that maybe we should take it out of the CIP. I think it definitely needs to be in the CIP because, again, it is a planning document. It's not a budget document. And the need has been amply demonstrated that we need to do something with both of those, with the IPD and the City Hall. I think we're in such a volatile situation politically and economically at this point that it's very hard to think about the timing of the funding. If we intend to go out to the public for support, we'll have to do a real assessment of how the electorate is feeling during these really difficult times about taxation, and those are really big questions. I agree with Councilmember Ray that one of the first pieces that we'll get is the recommendation from the task force. And that will be one piece of information, but there's still many other pieces of information we're going to need before we make a final decision about what we're going to do there. So, but it should be in the CIP. If we are identifying what our needs are and trying to plan out where we're going with big and little projects, then a planning document is exactly where it should be. So, yeah.
To that, I will add, this is 3 to 9 years out, 3 to 8 years out. I mean, that's the time frame that we are going to need to, if not sooner, resolve the IPD operational issues that have already been identified, and hopefully 3 to 9 years is the time frame for a city hall, figuring out what we're going to do about our city hall. So, I think that timing is fine. Funding is, just so up in the air. I'm not sure this document gives much guidance other than saying it's a giant $60 million hole that we have to fill. A pothole, if you will, of $60 million. So then on to the proposed parks, trails, facilities, and IT projects. Who wants to go first? Deputy Council President.
Thank you, Councilmember Ray. So do I support the proposed park trails, facilities, and IT projects? Short answer, yes. I would love it if we could support and fund all of them. It's just heartbreaking in some ways, but these are the ways that we get through and figure out where we're going to go. But yes, I think the staff has done a good job of identifying the priorities here. Thank you. Thank you.
What she said. No, seriously, I'll start with technology because I think that's kind of an interesting one. I like the focus on some of the technology initiatives that have been identified as new projects because I think they're ones that actually create value for us. I'm thinking that it was smart to move the PC replacement program from REIT to a cost allocation. That actually just generates a little more cash flow from the enterprise funds, and that makes a lot of sense. We always hate seeing parks projects removed or even modified, so I think that's a challenge. But I do like the idea that we do need a new park in Issaquah Highlands in the west, in that we have a lot more residential housing going in there, and having access to more parks is good. And then with facilities, again, it's the focus on what can we do to maintain what we have. So that was just a really long way to say exactly what Deputy Council President DeMichelle said.
I'm generally supportive of this. I think that with parks and trails, we make incremental progress every single year. And I think our city is in far better shape than it was 16 years ago when I started on council. And we keep chugging along, and we keep making strategic acquisitions and then working those in. And I think that's valuable. I will put out again my hope that there comes a time when the vision that we have had for Confluence Park gets executed. I think that could be just one of the best parks in King County. I think it's a wonderful space right now, but when you look at what the vision is for Confluence Park, I think that the me from 12 or 14 years ago when Mayor Freisinger was cutting the ribbon on that park, I think I'd be a little disappointed that we haven't made more progress on it. So I'll just put that out there. It's good we're working on the Eck House. I think that's important. I think that's a good step. But that park has been in a holding pattern for a long time because it's a lot of money, right? It's the vision of that park is massive in terms of what the investment will be to get there. But it's the one area that hasn't had that, for a while now, that continual improvement that all the rest of the park system has had. But having said that, I'm supportive of this, also the facilities and IT side of it. I'm good with that. So, any further thoughts on these three topics before I look back to the city administrator and ask if he has the information that he needed from us this evening?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Great. Well, thank you. With that, and I wish I could go to the top of my page really quickly, but I can't. So the next item we have is, somebody help me out. Lake Sammamish State Park Sports Field with Director Watling. Sorry, it is COM 0144, Lake Sammamish State Park Sports Fields, to be precise.
Forgive me as I'm seeking to share my screen.
Thank you, Director Monahan and the whole team for that. Appreciate it.
Cassidy, forgive me, I am am I sharing my
There we go.
webinar window?
Nope, nope.
So I am sharing now. How's that? What's that? My presentation showing here.
Share content, yeah, let's try that one. Where's your presentation? Is
Right
it in
there.
Chrome?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here we go. All right, apologize for that. I'm back. Thank you, Chair Bartz. Good evening, Council. Jeff Watling again. Yeah, tonight, we want to have a conversation with you. We're not seeking necessarily action tonight from you, but I wanted to inform and update and get some feedback from you on an opportunity that's been presented to the city. The update tonight is really in the opportunity here is to consider maintaining and scheduling a portion of the athletic fields at Lake Sammamish State Park following Issaquah Soccer Club's ending their agreement, their maintenance and management agreement with state parks. All right, so in sharing, we're going to be very interested in getting your feedback. You'll see on the timeline later on in this presentation, we're really on the front end of formalizing an agreement with state parks, so any feedback you can provide us would be really helpful as we go into those finalized negotiations with state parks and bring a potential agreement back to you. A little bit of background and some context on this. In 2009, an agreement between the Issaquah Soccer Club and Washington State Parks was entered into, where Issaquah Soccer Club became the maintainer, manager, scheduler, and sole user of the sports fields at state parks. And that's been obviously a longstanding use. Many Issaquah residents, youth, boys and girls have utilized and had access to those fields through soccer.
Director Watling, is this specifically just the big complex at the southeast corner of the state park?
It is.
The
I have
contiguous
a map
complex?
that
Oh,
I'll show. Yeah, I'll show you later
Thank
in the
you.
presentation that gives specifics. But yeah, it does not include what you see as the two baseball fields when you're on I-90. Right. Not to bury that lead. So some work that we've been doing as a department and working with the community and working with you in 2022, we took a look at a little more focused look at an athletic field study that identified needs that we have within our city and within our system. Through that study, we recognize that transitioning to multi-use fields is in our best interest as a city. When you look how land constrained we are, the opportunity to purchase additional flat, accessible, developable land on the valley floor could be really, really expensive. And so that study really set into motion conversations we began to have with both the Issaquah School District and state parks to say, hey, as we look at all of the publicly owned athletic fields, both our city, school district, and state park, how do we make sure we're positioning, we're investing, we're making sure they're accessible to the community, because that really is our ability to not only address current need, but future need with those existing public spaces. That was then reaffirmed as we adopted and went through the Park System Plan update in 2024, again, furthering our conversations with both the Issaquah School District and Lake Sammamish State Park, as realizing those existing assets are essential for, again, not only our current needs, but our future needs as well. Then earlier this year, late first quarter, state parks contacted us and the Parks Department to let us know, as I said earlier, Issaquah Soccer Club, too many ISs, Issaquah Soccer Club was terminating their maintenance and management agreement due to a number of issues going on with the soccer club, and inquired as to our interest and our ability and capability of assuming maintenance and scheduling of those fields. Here's a map that gives a little bit of context. Thank you, Chair March. The existing fields that we're looking at that are under that maintenance management agreement are really the large collection of fields that are off of Northeast Sammamish, Lake Sammamish Drive, across from the IHOP. I would note that we didn't color them. The Issaquah Soccer Club also, if you can see my cursor circling, their maintenance and management agreement included this small section of fields directly across from the Costco. We are not necessarily at this time, I think just given the condition, the lack of maintenance that those fields have had for many, many years, are not looking or considering the city assuming that responsibility. In our conversations with state parks and realizing spring is here, spring has sprung, grass is growing, we have, in partnership with state parks, and really a solid relationship has been established and is continuing to flourish there. Have assisted them with doing some initial, not only maintenance assessment, Rick Still, our assistant director and overseer of park operations, is here as well, should you have any questions. But as we began really digging into what level of maintenance could we provide, we've begun to do at least some initial work with state parks, knowing that any formal agreement is still in the works. As we did that assessment, and as we've talked with state parks, not only in this conversation, but it really over the last year, you're familiar, state parks is updating their 2007 management plan. They're asking themselves, as the owner of this property, what role they feel like sports fields should be in the state park long term. So if we've entered into those relationships with them, as we understand some of the wet conditions that have existed along the size of the current field spaces, we're proposing to assume maintenance and management of a little smaller footprint. This would be the northern section of the big field. That proposed City of Issaquah field use that you see highlighted there translates to 7 acres, as opposed to the full roughly 14 acres that complex sees. We think that is more doable for us from a maintenance and management standpoint, but also I think looking into the future and realizing some of the balance that we need to have and being a really good environmental steward of the state park, as well as a steward and a provider of athletic fields, that smaller footprint makes sense. Another note I would say on this slide is we're intending to manage these much differently than they were managed under the soccer club, where you had a sole exclusive use. We would position these to be managed and maintained in a way that could support additional sports that really haven't had access to those fields before. Cricket, lacrosse in particular, other sports that need rectangular or square field spaces, that we would not try and transition this to baseball, softball, but this could really not only keep those sports fields in use, but also relieve some of the additional, the pressures we feel through our system with some of these other sports as well.
Can I ask this, I'm not sure exactly how big this is. How does this compare, for instance, to the pads up in the Highlands?
Pads in the Highlands, so pad 1, which is the two synthetic turf fields side by side, is roughly 2.5 acres. So this is
A bunch
double
bigger.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Deputy Council President?
Yeah, and just looking at the map, what would be the access route in there? Will we have to create a road in, or is that an existing road that I'm looking at?
No, so that beige area you see that I'm circling, that's the existing parking lot. So
Oh, that's a
there's
parking
existing-
lot.
There's existing
Oh.
access, existing parking that we
Okay.
would work in partnership with state parks through this agreement.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't
Maintaining, yeah.
read that way. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so all the support infrastructure is already there. As we talked through our maintenance plan and really wanted to, I think, set a realistic goal for how we pursue this, two things, and I'll talk about a little bit further. One was we feel it makes sense for us as a city to enter into a short-term agreement with state parks to pilot this, if you will. Also giving state parks opportunity for them to finish their management plan and respect as the property owner. They need to make a determination on the role that sports fields will have within the state park. With looking at an agreement that would go through the remainder of this biennial budget, so through December of next year, we are proposing, and as I think we finalize this maintenance agreement with the state, we will have a better idea of what this budget looks like, but managing expenses and revenues to be cost neutral, to be neutral. So a maintenance plan we're putting together would probably include an additional part-time, non-benefited maintenance staff. We would not be looking at needing to bring on an additional full-time staff person. We have existing equipment. There'd obviously be a cost and some additional supplies. Those expenses, though, we feel could be balanced with the anticipated revenues that we would and could collect over this 18-month period. The first year revenue is it's kind of like any business. Our expenses are going to exist a little sooner than the revenues are going to be coming in, but we do feel like we'll be able to do this in this short-term window in a way that balances as a neutral. So on to options. The first option, and as I hinted on, would be enter into this short-term agreement with state parks, again, through the remainder of our current biennial budget, so through December 2026. Again, we think that this would add additional flexibility to offer multiple sports, to have access to that space like they've never had before. We would look at beginning scheduling the field use as early as this fall. As we've talked extensively with Mayor and City Administrator Bobkowitz over these last couple of months, administration certainly supports and recommends that we move forward with this option as well. I would note at the Park Board meeting last night, I had presented this and had a great conversation with Park Board, wanted their feedback as a great body of residents. They unanimously supported we pursue this short-term agreement as well. Again, this short-term agreement aligns really well with state parks and some decision-making they need to have. It aligns really well, honestly, with us to, I think, understand what community use would be. So if we were to enter into a longer-term plan, we would be that much more informed as to what maintenance needs would be, what actual field use would look like. The other option, if we don't want to pursue that, would be to do nothing. State Parks has said they're not in a position financially or resource-wise to just continue to assume maintenance, so these fields would just sort of revert back to a more natural state. I don't need to emphasize this too much, but again, given this athletic field study that we've done, loss of these existing fields, we do not have necessarily existing capacity to just absorb that into the remaining system, both school district and what the city manages.
Director Watling, can I ask about the state of the parking lot? It's been a few years since my kids played soccer, but when they played soccer, that field was a challenge with a four-wheel drive.
Yes, absolutely. We've been in conversation with state parks about that as I look at Rick, and that will need to be part of our short-term agreement, is just how do we make sure the condition of that parking lot is at a level we're comfortable with, and they, as the owners, quite frankly, of the property, are comfortable with as well. So it's a topic. We'll definitely address it in, should we be pursuing a short-term agreement in terms of how we address that.
Got it. Thank you. Councilmember Ray.
I have a bevy of questions. What is the Issaquah Soccer Club planning to do for fields? Or are they just not going to play anymore?
Yeah, great question. I don't have all the inside knowledge. I think they're in a financial place where they have been absorbed by a different soccer club. A Bellevue area soccer club is now assuming their management. That soccer club, as I've been in contact with, that new soccer club, the Bellevue-based soccer club, is interested in renting fields from the city, but they're not interested in being the maintainer and manager of fields. So there's an additional soccer club, sorry, Wally, here in Issaquah, the Issaquah Football Club, IFC, is certainly seeing increased use in youth as well. They also have interest in, and have been, they're a renter of Central Park and some of our other field spaces. They would be very interested in the use of these fields as well.
All right.
As a soccer parent, I can provide a little bit more information. Those fields were in regular use up until about 2 years ago by the recreation soccer teams, and we have now been placed on the road. And so we are at every middle school on the east side that has a field. So we've been to Mercer Island, we've been to Bellevue, we've been to Sammamish. And so what they've done is the teams are just traveling more outside of Issaquah.
Okay.
For use. And most of these fields that are being used at these schools are artificial turf fields.
So we talked about the parking lot, and so that would still be part of the maintenance of the state park. They would still own the parking lot. And I mean, they'd all own it all, but they would still be maintaining the parking lot.
Correct. We would probably be partnering with them in litter and some of those just operational realities.
Cool. And so my biggest question, one I want you to think about, what kind of liabilities does it create for the city to be the maintenance partner of that facility or that field? If something were to happen there, what liability does that create for the city?
A great question. We would certainly work closer with the city attorney as we draft that agreement. My initial response is it looks no different than the current fields that we manage and maintain in terms of risk. Sports field use falls well within the recreation immunity law here in the state of Washington. How we ensure that that's transferred to property we're managing owned by state parks, by another public agency, we would want to make sure that that's sort of understood and clearly stated in the agreement.
And then I'm guessing you just answered my last question, which is the process for scheduling these fields then would be the same as the process we use for scheduling any of our other facilities or fields?
Exactly. As we've talked not only with the maintenance team, but our recreation team who scheduled, we would have this fall under the exact same sort of scheduling priorities and guidelines for Central Park and Tibbetts Valley Park. Yep.
Great. Thanks, Jeff.
You got it.
I have a question. Do we have a way, I'm gonna put on my prognosticator hat, I'm gonna put on my great Karnak hat and predict that in 2 or 3 years, this will be really successful, and what you'll hear is that it needs to be to the same standard as our other play fields in the city. That the parking lot needs to be the same standard, and the fields themselves need to be the same standard, and we will be challenged by our success. So is there a way for us to, and it's not a zoning thing, but is there any policy that we can invoke to make clear that these would not be, we're not gonna turf these anytime in the foreseeable future, right? These are gonna be fields that we're gonna maintain, and they're gonna be great to play soccer on, but they're not gonna be like Pad 1, right? Because I really worry that in 2 or 3 years, we could have the public clamoring for us to spend a very large amount of money to bring it to the same standard as some of our other fields, even though we don't own it. And so do we have a way to set expectations appropriately so that we won't be facing that potential prognostication?
Sure, yes. I would say first and foremost, any decision or opportunity for that starts with state parks, right? They would be the owner, and is that something they're even supportive of within their state park? Does that meet the mission and vision of state parks? As for community interest, I guess I don't know. I'm putting my Parks Director hat on, which sort of always stays on, I suppose. Hard to tamper that, or hard to say, hey, don't aspire to wanting something else. I think we would clearly communicate what we have the capacity for and the capability for, and the level of service that we would strive for. Making a quality grass facility is what we have in front of us, and that's the goal, right? That's the North Star that we're pointing at. Should 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, if this is a success, what I would, I guess, encourage you to consider and think is whatever Issaquah's population is going to be in the future, whatever athletic field needs we have, should there be interest and willingness by state parks to consider improving that, that will be a far less expensive endeavor than us buying commercial land somewhere and starting from scratch to build a similar facility somewhere in Issaquah. So, but yeah, I think we do the best to manage expectations. I think it's a great point.
Thank you.
All right, so last slide before getting final response from you, just looking ahead at timeline, next steps, remainder of this month and into June. Should we look at proceeding, we will be finalizing that agreement with state parks. Again, for that interim sort of 18-month agreement, bring that back to you, probably full council in July. Again, would welcome your feedback there, allowing us to put this into our scheduling matrix and begin seeing some degree of community use happening this August and September. Sort of looking ahead, by Q2 of 2026, we'll be well on our way in working with state parks. Again, their own management plan work, our own work and feedback that we'll see from use to determine if a long-term agreement is something that both agencies want to pursue, allowing us by Q3 of 2026 to have a long-term agreement that would allow us to begin incorporating those anticipated expenses and revenues into the 27-28 budget process.
Councilmember Ray?
Here's an off-the-wall question for you. Would the state parks be interested in deeding that property to us as opposed to having us a maintenance agreement?
You said deeding it to us?
Deeding it, yeah.
Ooh, don't know.
Yeah,
But
I'm
it
just
could certainly be-
thinking in the long term, and I think that Councilmember Martz is spot on with his prognostication hat. And if we're going to be doing, being in a situation where we're going to be looking at upgrades, I'd rather be upgrading city property than upgrading state property, or being in kind of a in-between state where there's pressure to do it, and yet we don't have really the right, actually, even to possibly do it. So let me just plant that seed with you and let you chew on it.
No, thank you for that. That's something that's also crossed our minds. Again, I'm not going to speak for state parks. That's an independent decision on their part. But knowing we're an owner of other public city-owned property that adjoins state parks, we've certainly at least presented to them the idea of what if sometime in the future, if we're good maintainers and managers of active park space, and you're great maintainers and managers of conservation space, is their opportunity to create a win-win. But yeah, that's long term, I think. Yeah, but great question. So any other, again, just seeking your feedback, thoughts, certainly based on your questions.
So before we provide that feedback, I will ask again if any members of the public, either present or online, are interested in speaking to this issue. I see at least one member of the public here. So, sir, if you'd want to come forward, give us your name, address, relationship to the city, and your thoughts.
Thank you, Jeff. Good evening, Council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Kiran Komaravolu. I have some notes. I'm going to use these notes to speak. I don't have the experience of speaking up here, so if I make a fool out of myself, please excuse me. So I'm a resident of the area for about a decade, about 12 years now. I have two boys in the Issaquah School District. One goes to Cougar Mountain Middle School, one goes to Cougar Ridge Elementary. I live in Bellevue by Lakemont, but fall under the Issaquah School District. My wife works for Costco. I work for T-Mobile. We live right in the middle. So I happen to be the secretary of the Seattle Youth Cricket League. I'm also a cricket dad. I see a soccer dad here, so a sport parent basically, right? I've never played the sport, but my kids love the sport, so I somehow got into it. So we are a youth cricket league. We support about 500 kids in the area, in the greater Seattle area. We also have some kids coming from Portland to play in our league. We rent, ICP is one of our fields that we rent. We also rent Sammamish Middle School's field. We have fields in Monroe. We have fields in Snoqualmie that we rent, and we play there. We play out there, right? Cricket is an Olympic sport, if you guys didn't know. It's a very fast-growing sport. A lot of youth in the area are getting into it. We had about, I would say, 5 years back, we had about 150-odd kids. Today, we have 500-odd kids, right? And I'm not even counting the adults. These are all U15 and under kids, mostly high schoolers, middle schoolers, and so on. Right? So we also run some national tournaments in the area too, in case you guys didn't know. So we have a tournament this Memorial Day. We have teams coming from Florida, Canada, Vancouver, California. I have 3 teams coming from California to play here. And we ourselves are going out to other cities to play. So it's a very fast growing sport and a very, so we would love the space to be given out for cricket. We are not asking for funding. I mean, we can get the funding. We can help the city improve the space. We can bring in, grants or donations or whatever, right? But we would love for that space to be opened up for cricket and be given to youth cricket. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, and you did not make a fool of yourself, so congratulations.
Thank you.
I see another member of the public that would like to speak. Sir, if you come to the microphone.
Good evening, everyone, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to talk, and it's a great topic. I came to know about this last minute. By the way, I'm Pani Chidneni. I'm a resident of this area for 25 years. I own multiple businesses here, including one Indian restaurant here, Masti Bar and Grill. I got a chance to meet some of you in various events. So, good to be here and talking about cricket again. So, Kiran is part of cricket. Recently, he came in a few years ago. Again, growing people passionate about sport, helping youth take up cricket. I've been here for 25 years, and we have been working on cricket for 23 plus years. I own the Seattle minor league cricket team, work with Orcas closely. Again, similar, there are multiple organizations trying to find space for cricket. It's a very dire need to have, and the type of land we need is not easy to get. And this is absolutely a golden opportunity to include cricket in this one. In 2007, before you signed this contract to Issaquah Soccer Club, I was trying to get that field for cricket. But we did not have the funds to support at that situation. But I think we are in a better situation to partner and make it a win-win today. So we would love the support, and there is an opportunity to make a difference here. Issaquah did not have a field. Sammamish State Park gave one field, which is, as you were raising concern about the parking lots, think of that in the field itself, right? So it's a makeshift one, but this is an opportunity to put some good quality fields out there for cricket from size-wise, and I think with the partnership we can make it a really good one here. So thank you for the opportunity, for letting us talk here. We really expect your support on this one. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have any members of the public online who wish to speak to this issue?
Thank you, Chair. I do see one virtual participant that would like to make a comment. I will be making you a panelist, then you will be able to unmute when you're ready. Are we ready? I don't want to jump
please
ahead
do.
again. Okay,
I don't have to give that spiel again. So.
thank you. Okay, Connie, yes, you should be able to unmute.
Thank goodness, I don't want to hear the whole thing again. So, Lake Sammamish State Park, holy cow. Anyway, about 99.9 of Lake Sammamish State Park is critical area buffer at this point with our new code. And so these fields that you're talking about are either wetland or wetland buffer. So, on principle, they shouldn't be sports fields because we actually need natural area to thrive on the planet, right? So, it goes against my grain to support it. So I won't entirely support it. I will say that for a short-term use of fields that are for multiple sports and allow use of the general public on the fields for casual use, I don't have too much problem with it because the state park has a heck of a time keeping up with anything anyway. I will, however, dig my feet into the ground if someone says, wow, what we need to do is we need to drain these fields like we try to drain all the other fields that are basically in our groundwater because it's expensive and not possible. So getting that land from the state parks is another one of those situations where you are endlessly going to be fighting the water because the water table is right there. The geese, they love swimming on those fields all winter long and most of the spring. So they actually don't make great fields. More interesting fields are the baseball fields where they're currently playing cricket. I see them sometimes. Upland fields that then the city would be able to help maintain and schedule more effectively would be a much better bargain with the state park. The one question I have is, does this agreement have to go to the state park commission? Because the state parks run slow and the state park runs awkward. So I would be interested in understanding what the process is with state parks to actually get this agreement stamped and approved, and then what, of course, the public interface is for that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And with that, we can move to deliberation. Who'd like to go first? Councilmember Ray.
I'll start us off, and I'm going to call it deliberations, but I have some thoughts. One is, there's clear need that, for fields, and these may not be the optimal fields that one would want to play in, but I do like the idea of opening up more space to different sports. I mean, and it seems like we may have become a little bit of a soccer monopoly on that space, and I think that broader perspectives are good, and I like that idea. I'm not opposed. I don't, not to sound like the broken record, but given our current financial situation, I just would hate to think that we are in this thing where we are running any, or for very long, deficit on this. So it's got to become cost neutral, even cost positive, very, very quickly. So other than that, I think it's an interesting idea. It feels like a community need, and if we think we can manage it without a lot of additional cost or hassle, I say, let's give it a shot. If it doesn't work, we'll give it back.
Deputy Council President?
Very much the same. I'm excited about the fact that this opportunity came to us, and I think that speaks well to our partnership that's been developed with the state park. So I would say that I fully support us going ahead and seeing what kind of agreement we can make. And I think that our Parks Department does such a great job of maintaining and keeping fields that this will be a win-win for everybody. I also am a strong supporter of providing young people with healthy activities, and so the uses for that field play into that goal completely. And I agree with Councilmember Ray, opening it up to a wider range of sports is really a good idea. And thank you for your comments, to both of you for your comments. So those are my remarks. Thank you.
Well, I have been beating the drum of more cricket fields since before you joined us here in Issaquah, Director Watling. So the idea of multi-purpose fields that would have multiple uses is very exciting to me. I love soccer, but these fields could really mean a lot of things to a lot of people. I think there's, I want to make sure that, how do I say this right? There is an equity element to this. We have a large South Asian community, and there aren't a lot of ways that we can manifest support for that community. So I think lacrosse is also important. I would hate to have lacrosse dominate merely because there are, NCAA scholarships available to Ivy League schools for lacrosse. I know how some Issaquah parents are, and I say that as a parent whose child applied to Ivy League schools, but did not play lacrosse. So I just hope that as we look to schedule these fields, that equity is one of the elements we take a look at in making sure that our entire community is covered, and I'm confident it will be. Anything else we want to, and I will look to the city administrator, and he seems to have a satisfied look on his face that he's gotten the feedback that he was looking for from us. Anything for the good of the order? All right. With that, then, we are adjourned at 7:03 p.m. And thank you again for the members of the public joining us this evening. And thank you, everyone at home.